New Mexico is a land of stories, myths, and legends. The unexplained and the unexplored. I'm Chad Brummett, and we are exploring the unique and unusual world of New Mexico Strange.
Hello, and thank you for joining us for this episode of New Mexico Strange. I'm Chad Brummett, and today we have the distinct pleasure of talking with a serial entrepreneur, a ghost aficionado, a bed and brew, not bed and breakfast, bed and brew owner, an all-around cool guy, Jesse Heron. And we are talking about, there's something that feels different about the Painted Lady Bed and Brew for a variety of different reasons. Full disclosure, myself and our editor, Tommy Garcia, along with Jordan Jonas, who was a local magician who was now in Chicago, we had the opportunity of exploring the Painted Lady Bed and Brew a few years back. And all I got to say is that it was an interesting experience. We had some fun. We had some interesting things, especially Jordan Jonas, which we'll talk about a little bit later on. But first of all, Jesse, welcome. Thank you for being here with us.
Yeah, awesome. Glad to be here.
Yeah. So first things first, let's get the serial entrepreneurship out of the way, because you along with Mike Silva and a variety of different partners are behind a number of different enterprises here in Albuquerque. Tell us a little bit about all these.
Yeah, it's just Mike and I actually. So
okay,
we started up ABQ Trolley Co. back in May of 2009. And then later on, we added the Albuquerque Downtown Ghost Walk a few years later. And then probably about 11 years ago, we added the Duke City Peddler, which is our little 14-person party bike that does a little pub crawl around the Old Town and Sawmill area. And then 6-7 years ago, I don't even remember anymore. I have no idea the timeline. We purchased ABQ in a Box from a UNM business student, and we've been running that as like our product that we ship out around the country with a little taste of Albuquerque that people have left. We started that probably 6-7 years ago.
Wow. And then, because clearly you got a lot of time on your hands. You don't have a lot
I know. Yeah, right.
You decided to purchase an old building that was supposedly haunted and turn it into a bed and brew.
That's right.
Wow. All right. So let's talk about the Painted Lady before it was the Painted Lady. What grabbed your attention about this building, and what do you know about its history?
I was living on the west side for many years during the early trolley years, and just kind of felt disconnected from the culture of the city, and wanted to kind of come back to the Old Town area. And I just spent months just kind of driving around through different downtown neighborhoods. And I kind of stumbled across it and actually had the for sale sign. So we got a realtor and started doing some research on it. And I remember one of the funniest things is we went in there the first time and walked through not knowing any of the history at all. And then my realtor reached out and she says, it used to be a Nazi grocery store. And I was like, I don't think that's a thing. What is a Nazi grocery store? So it turns out, in doing some digging and with some assistance from the city, it used to be an old saloon called the Swastika Saloon. But this is good swastika. This is the positive swastika. The swastika, if you are New Mexican, you know the swastika. This is the, it has the plus versus Hitler's X swastika. You see it in the Chemo Theater. You see it on federal buildings downtown. So it's a good swastika that's been used by, most cultures for thousands of years. So it's the good swastika.
Right. Okay.
But that lends to Nazi grocery store. So it was the Swastika Saloon, which operated in the late 1800s and early 1900s as a saloon with a quote-unquote wine room in connection, and a wine room back then was a type of brothel. And then we get to grocery store because during Prohibition, the saloon closed and reopened as Charlie's Grocery. So then she saw this Swastika Grocery. There's your Nazi grocery store. So it was very, very silly and I don't think that's a thing, but it kind of is. We got there. Yeah.
Sure. And it had kind of a violent past during its time as a saloon.
It did.
And there are even still some relics. I know when I visited in 2021, there was bloodstain on the floor at some point, right? Is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's during the renovation, I bought the property in 2014, so coming up on 11 years next week, actually. There were some guys working in one of the rooms, and when I purchased it, they had been turned into a triplex, and there was shag carpeting, there was a drop ceiling, and at some point in the middle of the 20th century, they did a a renovation that turned it into apartments, basically. So you would have had no idea that it had this great historic significance to it. So we were ripping out all that sort of stuff, and I had two guys that were refinishing the floors. And luckily, the shag carpet was like protecting these beautiful wood floors that hadn't been touched in probably 50, 60 years. And I'm outside pulling weeds, and they came and grabbed me. And they're like, there's something on the floor. We can't get it out. Can you come take a look? And I was like looking at it, and they're like, oh, well, what's like the story with this place? And I told them, it was an old saloon and brothel, and there were shootouts and knife fights and stabbings. And they both looked at each other, and they said, yeah, blood. It's blood. And they're like, do you want us to get it out? I'm like, no, leave it. That's awesome. That's amazing. Yeah, that'll sell. That's perfect. So yeah.
Wow. Is it still there?
It's still there. It's in a corner underneath the couch that can't be moved very easily. Right. So it's like when I tell people I have it, I have a photo, so I can show you a photo of it. But it doesn't look like there was a murder, but it's a big pool of like dark.
Wow.
It's what blood that's 130, 140 years old looks like, I guess.
Holy moly. Wow, yeah. That is crazy. So you renovate this place. Was the idea always to turn it into a bed and brew? And before we go, because I keep saying bed and brew, and some people might say, Chad,
what is that?
What are you doing? Tell us about this concept, because I think it's such a cool concept, and very much right up the Jesse alley. I gotta say, it was perfect.
Yeah, well, I don't wake up in a timely manner. I don't know how to cook, so it would have been like bagel bites at like noon, if it was a bed and breakfast. But like I remember just one day I was thinking, I wanted it to be more than just like an Airbnb. This is at a time when everybody was, let's get an Airbnb, let's do an Airbnb. And, I want to be more than just an Airbnb. And I was like, I wonder what else I could do that's not cooking, but that's unique and lends itself to Albuquerque. And I Googled bed and brew to see if it was a thing, and it was. There was like a half dozen or so bed and brews throughout the country and a few in Europe, and I was like, okay, this is a thing. I can do this. I can serve beer in the evening as opposed to people getting up early and sitting around someone's kitchen table awkwardly at 7 a.m. around like eggs or whatever, So it's much more lends itself better to the strangers getting around a beer and kind of bonding over and talking over a beer than it does like early morning scrambled eggs.
Yeah. And it also, too, if folks have never been to the Painted Lady Bed and Brew, obviously during, the winter months when it's much colder, it's more difficult to do. But you've got this beautiful outdoor area for guests to sort of congregate, hang out, talk over a pint, share where they're from, and really kind of have this cultural exchange with each other.
Yeah, we in 2018 or so added a whole outdoor space with a beer garden. And the coolest part of the property, in my mind, is we have an original Albuquerque trolley from the 90s. Mm-hmm. It's the last one of its kind. It used to do a loop from the Alvarado Transportation Center downtown to the Old Town Plaza. And if you grew up in Albuquerque, you'd recognize these ones. They're like the blue and red ones. They had the original spelling of Albuquerque with the extra R on the outside of it.
I have never noticed that detail.
Yeah, wow. It was like back when Marty was mayor, he added it to create a dialogue or a conversation about our city's kind of cultural past and, that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So it's the last one of its kind, and it was sitting in a guy's yard in Estancia, and I went out there after a tip from somebody, and we towed it to the property in 2018 and started turning it into a tap room. So that's actually where we serve our beers to overnight guests and the public. When it's cold weather like tonight, we'll be in there serving, guests from all over the country and all over the world and some locals as well.
That is so cool.
Yeah, it's super rad, man. And it's got the red lights in there. It's called the Ghost Light Saloon at Painted Lady. So there's old historic trolley photos. There's some pre-Prohibition era stuff. There's some ABQ Trolley Co. Artifacts from Mike and I's company that are in there as well. So it's very uniquely Albuquerque,
Okay. Now, you had mentioned something, obviously, for guests of the Bed and Brew to stay there. Is this something that if we're not staying there, that we can just stop in and have a pint?
No, you can now. We actually just opened it last summer on June 6th to locals.
Okay.
So we're open Thursday through Sunday. So Thursdays 5:05 technically, but 5 to 9. Friday and Saturdays 5 to 10, and Sundays 5 to 9. And you can claim a free ticket on our website. So we just know to save you a seat because we're kind of limited to capacity about 20 people or so, especially in the winter when we can't put you outside in the beer garden. And it's free, and you get to show up. And we actually started brewing our own beer last year too. So we have our own beers on tap now, along with some guest taps. So it's changed quite a bit since the 2021 since your last visit.
Yeah, since we were out there. All right, so we'll kind of lean into this and kind of get into the paranormal activity that is supposed to have gone on there. We went out to check out and kind of do an investigation. And Tommy, our editor, he really has he is like a Ghostbuster, right? He's got all of this equipment, and he brought it out, and we experienced some interesting things which we can unpack in a minute. But as you were renovating, as you were going through, tell me about some of the experiences. Have you had paranormal experiences or things that went bump in the night, so to speak?
We bump and bang and boo and
boo, everything
loud,
in between.
Scary things. Yeah, I've had a little bit of everything. So I just moved out actually about 2 years ago.
Okay.
So my former apartment that I lived in there, the owner suite, is now available nightly for guests, and that's where all these stories took place, which is pretty cool because back then when like you guys were there and Ghost Adventures were there, you'd see these episodes, but you couldn't go into that apartment where everything happened. And now that I'm gone, you can. So from the very first night I moved in and was sleeping there the very first time, like things, I think they just are like the spirits or the ghosts or whatever that are on the property see new blood, and it had been vacant for like 2 years and, just sitting on the market. So there's new people in there. And they just kind of tiptoe around and come out and just kind of make themselves known. And I mean, that first year or so, we hired a contractor because I needed a ton of work. I mean, when I bought it in 2014, it was pretty much the neighborhood eyesore. So it was,
Really?
Bars on the windows and doors, chain link fence, weeds, goat heads everywhere. I mean, it was just not in great shape. But so the renovation was supposed to take 6 weeks. It ended up taking 1.5 years. It went over budget. I felt like the whole property was cursed. Like I remember Mike and I on the trolley, and like we probably went through like 5 or 6 blown out tires that year on the trolley, just randomly. And I was like, this is me. This is the property. It's cursed. It's lashed onto me. It's whatever. It was a tough year, but yeah, just I think, when you start doing renovations, it kind of, and we were bringing it back to its old, I don't want to say brothel glory, but like peeling it back to its historical like origins. And I don't know if they didn't like that or if it just stirs them up because it's revealing, the original layout of the property, and what they used to know, I guess.
You do hear that a lot too. I know that thinking of other local ghost stories, there were similar stories that happened at Church Street Cafe in Old Town. When Marie Coleman bought it, that when they were renovating, that there were some things going on, and you hear that a lot when there was any sort of renovation or any disturbance of a location. Those that lean into the belief of the supernatural and belief that that it may be haunted, they experience more things going on. So that kind of seems
it
like
tracks. It does. Yeah.
It really does. Now, you actually also had a ceremony performed to cleanse the space. Is that right?
There's been a bunch, but yeah.
There's been a bunch.
There's been
okay.
a bunch. Which one?
Which one?
There's been a whole bunch, yeah.
Tell us about some of those.
It's real funny because I kind of grew up watching the scary movies and horror. I mean, I had nightmares most of my childhood, so it wasn't great, but it later made me appreciate it as an adult. And so I kind of always wanted to live in like a haunted house, but I wanted like Casper the Friendly Ghost, where we'd be like, high-fiving in the hallway and like, wingman at the bar or whatever, It didn't happen that way at all. You can't control, I guess, which ghosts are haunting you. But yeah, basically things were getting pretty bad during that first 1.5 years of renovations. And at the time, I had a dog. It was just me and my dog, Bill Murray. He was a 3-legged greyhound.
Oh my gosh.
Pit bull mix. He just went by Murray, but he was Bill Murray. Named after,
I love
obviously,
that.
Bill Murray. And he was having some issues, and I was picking up on it a little bit. There were things would move a little bit. I would feel an energy. One night I was attacked in my sleep with actually something pressing down on my back, like forcing me into the mattress. And I actually had to woke up and physically fought it off, and I remember waking up and being like, that was awesome. It actually made contact. Like
That was your reaction.
yeah, and
wow.
it can cause harm, which wasn't cool, but it didn't. But it was like, holy cow, this happened. I was awake for it. I fought it off. Like, holy crap,
Right.
big time. But it was bad, and I could tell Murray, he was having some troubles, and randomly my doorbell rings one day, and I'm home, which is not often, and I go out to the street where the doorbell is, and there's like 6 ladies and a guy, and I open the door, and I'm like, yeah, and this one lady says, hey, I'm your neighbor. I live next door, and I'm sorry I haven't been over here yet. It's been over a year or so. And she said, and frankly, your place terrifies me, but we're all psychics. Can we come walk through the property? And I was like, yeah, of course, come on in,
Wow.
So there's the group of psychics, and they're walking through. And in the very front of my apartment, there's a little courtyard, and I have these two of the original interior brothel doors from the 1800s that we kind of framed there as like an entryway into my little apartment at the time. And one of the psychics, they were all walking, past it, and one of them stopped, and she's like touching the doors and rubbing it and going, oh, and I'm going, oh, like now I'm like, yeah, what'd you get, But back then I was like, okay, whatever. And she was like, you've had this place cleansed before. And I was like, yeah, because initially a year prior, we had I should probably start there. We had this Buddhist priestess come because we were having some issues. And as soon as I would walk into the office of my apartment, I would feel this like energy change. And when I was buying the property, one of the neighbors who actually has a business next door, his family built it. And so he'd had all this history passed down through the ages, and he points to from the street to the room, which is now the office, and he said the last people that lived there didn't even go in that room because I guess back in the 1800s when it was a brothel, a guy came in there off the street and he found I don't know if it was his wife or girlfriend or his favorite lady, I can't remember, it's not important, but she was with another man, which it's a brothel. I don't know why he would be surprised with that. Right. But he saw it, and he went back home and got an axe, and he came back into the room and just hacked the both of them to bits.
Oh my gosh.
And then walked outside the door and shot himself.
Wow.
And so apparently his spirit was still in that room, and man, we'd feel it. You'd walk in there, and it would just be walking into like an electromagnetic field. Not like just getting tingles on the back of your neck or like your hair standing up, but it was just like, holy cow, this is intense.
Wow.
So we would get that. So we had this Buddhist priestess. She did a cleansing, and she said, there's 3 spirits here. 2 of them are female. I'm going to help them cross over. She does her little magic, and they go and cross over. And then it feels different. I'm like, okay, that actually worked, And then she said, there's a guy, and he doesn't want to leave. He just hangs out in the corner of this office, like by the couch, and he's not going to go. And I was thinking, 2 out of 3 ain't bad. Maybe that's my Casper. Maybe that's my guy. It wasn't. But I was like, we can live in harmony. I got a ghost. And like, it's fun because I got a ghost, whatever. So this had happened like a year prior. Psychics show up. She's touching the door, and she says, you've had this place cleansed before. And I said, yeah. She said, there were 3 spirits here, and only 2 of them left. And I was like, yeah, that's pretty good, because nobody knew about this at that point. There was no painted lady yet. It was just Jesse living in this old brothel. And I was like, yeah, but, we're cool. It's a guy, and he's like there, and I stay out of his way, and he stays out of my way. And she looks at me, and she says, you're not cool. She said, when you're not around, he's tormenting your dog, and he's aging your dog.
Oh, my gosh.
And the longer you let him stay, the more power he's building. And I was like, well, you can mess with me, but you're not messing with Murray.
Sure.
So she came back like a couple days later, and I was like, well, how do we force him out? And she said, there's ways. So things got worse. I called her like the next day. She came with her partner, and they built this like demon trap thing. And they basically, it's like a bread pan. They put it on the floor of the apartment. They added a whole bunch of stuff that smelled really good and like rubbing alcohol. So they light it on fire, and they're saging, the entire apartment. And her partner was doing Reiki on Murray in his bed and soothing him. And it was supposed to like drive this entity into the demon trap, this bread pan thing, with flames coming out of it. And I'm videotaping the entire thing because I'm like into it, and it's exciting. And the flames are going out, and she's like casting it into this trap, and she's saying, "Raus, raus, raus," like in German, out, out, out. And then she goes, "It's gone." And I was like, "Okay, could you see it?" And she said, "I asked for its name because if I have its name, I have more power over it." And she said, "He wouldn't tell me its name, but all the other spirits in the house all shouted out, 'Bill.'"
Huh.
And I just imagine him being like this bully spirit entity, you know, and all the other guys were like, "Yeah, Bill, it's Bill. Get him, get him."
Yeah.
And she said that as he was going into the trap, he revealed his appearance to her, and he was dressed like a gentleman from the late 1800s or early 1900s with like a hat on, and he was clawing at her as he was going into the trap, trying to like, I don't know, take her with him.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, it was intense. And as soon as that happened, like Murray's bouncing around the house and he's smiling, and the air just lifted, and it was amazing, you know.
Wow.
But now that's
absolutely
happened like
incredible.
6-7 more times since then, because things come and go, and people have been staying there since we turned into the bed and brew with actually the liquor component and serving the beer in 2018. So we've had people from all over the world come and stay there, thousands of people, and sometimes they have things attached to them, or you know, they see Ghost Adventures, or they see your show, you know, with Jordan and Tommy, or the other things we've been on. And they come over and they do a little staycation, or they travel and they bring a Ouija board, or they bring pendulums, or they bring their crystals, and they don't know what they're doing, and they like wake stuff
Manifest
up.
the wrong stuff.
And it's fun for them for the night. And then I wake up the next morning and I'm like, holy cow, what happened last night? And I got to live with it because I'm living there like full time, you know?
Wow. So you had to do multiple cleansings.
Oh yeah, like
and
every few
multiple
months or
events.
so, there's been stuff that's happened.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you mentioned, you know, a lot of people coming and going. Have they ever come to you? Have you had guests that come in and say, "Jesse, you won't believe this," or "Hey, this happened. Do you know what this is?"
Yeah, if you take a look at our Google reviews, like you'll see, if you just type in the search bar like ghost or haunted, you'll see probably 20 or 30 reviews that mention it, not in like a bad way, but stuff from, you know, we woke up in bed and my husband had scratches down his back, and they weren't from me, you know, like that kind of stuff. But there's a lot. Or the funniest thing, Chad, is we'll be in the trolley serving, you know, our happy hour to the overnight guests, and there will be somebody who's in there who knows it's haunted because they saw it on whatever TV show and they're all about it. Then there's another guest who has no idea at all, and they're sitting there having a beer. And the one guest that's all about it is like, tell us about the demon trap and the succubus and all the crazy stuff that's happened to you. And the guest that has no idea it's haunted is like looking like terrified, like, you know, and I'm like, oh, they're friendly ghosts, you know, like downplaying it and stuff. But man, when I was living there for those 9 years, it was tough. It was intense, you know?
Wow. Was it, when we were there filming, I know that you were still in residence. Was it just something that you were kind of like wanting to move on to the next thing? Did there something happen? You're like, I'm just not living here anymore. Was it a paranormal reason for the move?
I started dating somebody, and we moved in together.
Gotcha.
Just down the road, which was amazing because she bought a house nearby because she knew how demanding the business is.
Sure.
So that was amazing. And we're in a great little neighborhood that's less than a half mile away, which is awesome. But towards the very end, man, the last few months or so, I had major anxiety about going to sleep because something was happening like every single night. So I'd be going to bed like 3-4 in the morning, just dreading it. And as soon as I laid my head down, all these weird things started happening. And like they make noise. Like they come in, you can hear them. They're like tripping over stuff. And then I saw weird stuff. I felt things, I heard things. I mean, it was making it where it was very uncomfortable living there, and it felt good to get out and not be sleeping in a haunted location.
So now that place is open to people that they can come in and stay in that apartment that you lived in. Have they mentioned similar occurrences or similar
they
feelings?
Have, yeah. And everyone's like, well, what's a haunted room? And it's like, well, they go through the walls. Like the whole place is haunted. There's portals. They come in. It's like a whole airport for spiritual, paranormal weirdness. So they tell me on occasion, or they'll email me. I've got a really cool like photo actually that happened after an event we had on Day of the Dead this past in 2024 with this like demon looking thing that you can see. Somebody was posing for a photo on a bench, and then she noticed it and sent me the photo. I'll have to send it to you so you can put it up over me talking right now, probably. That's for Tommy. That's for Tommy.
That's exactly.
But it was terrifying. But I mean, I've only been scared there once.
Really?
One time in 9 years was I actually scared. And it's been cleansed since then. All the bad stuff's gone. Things come in, things go. There's still spirits there. There's still activity, but I don't think it's a scary place. Like people stay there and they're not scared, but there is stuff. Like it's still very active. The place has its own little like pulse. You know?
Yeah. I know we've got a couple minutes left. So there's a couple of things that I want to get to that I think are really cool. First, and we've mentioned it a couple of times in their Ghost Adventures. You actually had Zach Bagans and company come out during the pandemic, no less, and shoot there. What was that experience like?
It was August 2020. It was face masks. There's no cure. There's no talk of a cure yet. It was scary times, and they almost didn't film because of the restrictions going on with filming. But luckily, we were able to accommodate them. Mm-hmm. It was great. It was a great experience. They kicked up some stuff, like when they came, I hadn't had a whole lot of stories happen recently, but I knew there was stuff here, and it had a great story, and they had never filmed in Albuquerque, so I felt good, being the ambassador for our city and getting Albuquerque some recognition on the show. But then the moment they got there, man, I'm like, oh my God, I feel it. I feel it again. Like, I know what this feels like, and I feel it. And then, I don't know if they brought stuff. I don't think they brought stuff with them, like something attached to them, but they're just, they're being there.
It always seems though when you watch that show, Zach Bagans, you're like, it's a good thing that these are ghosts, because I feel like one of them would start a fight with you, because he really is a provocateur in that way. And so I'm not surprised that he and the entourage could potentially kick that up.
Yeah, and then they leave. And the funny thing is, like, they do their lockdown, and really there's nobody on the property. All the production assistants and whoever, they're all in their cars on the street watching Netflix. And it was a pandemic, so nothing's open. So I'm just walking around Old Town for 4 hours, and I come back and they've left, and I didn't, see the guys again, but the producers are there and the guys I made friends with, and they're like, yeah, thanks for letting us do this, blah, blah, blah. So I go back into my apartment. It's like 3 a.m. I'm watching an episode of The Office to unwind or whatever. And then it airs a couple months later, and it ends, and they're capturing all this evidence, and Zach's like, it is unsafe for Jesse to live there. We have reached out. If he needs this place to be cleansed again, it is pure evil. And I'm like, I went back into the evil den, and I'm watching The Office, dude. And they don't reach out to you and let you know what they find. I'm watching it when everybody else is, and I'm like, oh man, okay, so I probably should have got a room that night somewhere else,
Well, I'm glad that you survived. I'm glad that you're here talking about it and running it. So I know we got to wrap up, but before we do, because things are cooking there, there's a lot going on at the Painted Lady. If people here in Albuquerque, maybe they want to do a staycation, or they just want to stop by and take a look at it, or if this is reaching someone outside of New Mexico and they want to book a staycation here, tell us kind of the things that are going on, like just kind of an ongoing programming at the Painted Lady.
Well, we've got events going on almost every single week. They're all kind of paranormal in nature. It's a whole event series called Bruise and Booze. Mm-hmm. So if you go to bruiseandbooze.com, it's just our event page. So we have people like Cody Polston, who's penned a ton of books on the paranormal and haunted Old Town, and he does presentations with book signings on, he's got one coming up. Throughout the season, he has these book signings and paranormal presentations. We have magic shows that are happening there. We have some burlesque we're going to get going there on the property this season as well. Okay. And every time we brew a new beer, I name all the beers after lines from scary movies I grew up with in the 80s and 90s and 2000s. Okay. So, for example, last season we had a beer come out that was an amber, and I named it Wolfman's Got Nards after a line from Monster Squad. Wolfman's dark and amber, brown, whatever. It doesn't necessarily have to make sense. Mm-hmm. And so we show the movie that goes with it on the big screen in our beer garden, and we play a scary movie bingo, and people show up and they win prizes, and they're drinking the beer from the movie that they're watching. And
That's
it feels
fantastic.
good. It's awesome. So that's like our big event is the Scary Movie Bingo and the beer premieres.
Okay, that sounds
Yeah.
like a lot of fun because I'm a huge
They're good.
horror movie
They're fun.
fan.
Oh, yeah.
and, you know,
Dude, it's right
not
up
a
your
drinker, but I am definitely there for the
We've
scary
got
movies and the
kombucha,
fun.
we've got athletic brewing NA stuff, we have wine, we have stuff for, kind of the non-drinkers as well. So
Yeah.
you can definitely come, man. We'd be able to accommodate you.
Fantastic. Very quickly, if we want to find the Painted Lady, obviously we've got the Bruise and Booze going on, but if we want to book a stay overnight and have our own paranormal experience, how do we do that?
bedandbrew.com. That's right to our website, our own booking engine. That's the best rate that you'll see out there.
Okay.
You can even book our Fright Night package, which comes with an autographed copy of 2 different books that were written about Painted Lady, or at least
Really?
were involved in that story, and it comes with a little EMF meter as well, so you can mess around your room and stuff too. So yeah,
Oh my gosh.
come out locals, staycation, and then we've got events. You get a free beer with when you check in at happy hour, and then there's a dozen or so breweries within a mile walk of the property, including the Old Town Plaza, a mile away.
Yeah, it's a great location. It is
Yes.
a lot of fun, and it is definitely, if you were into the paranormal tourism and into that,
Right.
this is definitely on the bucket list for that. Jesse, thank you so much for coming
Yeah,
in.
man, good to see you.
And really, honestly, thanks for all that you do for the tourism industry here in New Mexico. I know that you and Mike Silva, you guys have so many things, so many irons, in the fire, and we just want to keep more of them going because you guys do great stuff for the city. So thank you
Thanks,
for
man.
that.
Appreciate it.
Absolutely. And folks, if you want more information, of course, we will share links to the Painted Lady Bed and Brew on our website at KRQE.com. You can also catch up on more episodes of New Mexico Strange. Until next time, I'm Chad Brummett. Keep things spooky.